as some members are doing now. Like I said, yeah, I'm questioning my thing. Like I said, posterity will hold us responsible if we don't do what is correct. And we on this side, I don't expect any member of parliament to make any comment. We on this side, if the processes and procedures are compliant with what is entrenched in our constitution, we will fully support this process. But in a case that the processes and procedures are not compliant with what is in the constitution, we will not involve, we will recuse ourselves from the dangers that lie ahead. It's not a threat, except if somebody is of the opinion that this very amendment will not be compliant with the laws of Sierra Leone. So to me, one commendation I want to give to this parliament is that we have been very consultative. On several occasions, when issues rise up in parliament, we would come together, we'll hang heads, and at the end of the day, we'll have a common meeting point. I hope and pray that procedure continues. Like I said, we on this side are not averse to this. I'm speaking on behalf of the opposition. We are not averse to this, but we would ensure that every bit of the process complies with the national law. I also made to understand that the bill presented to Parliament does not contain entrenched clauses. I want it to be clearly and abundantly made known to all of us that the bill we have seen has entrenched clauses. And we know what the process calls for in a case of an entrenched clause. It does not only stop at the 2/3 in Parliament, it extends to a referendum. So on behalf of the opposition, I want to assure government of our fullest cooperation if the processes and procedures are lawful. But if they are not lawful, we will not cooperate. If they are not lawful, we are not cooperate. Order, please. Order. Colleagues, honorable members, please, let's have them go. Please, let's continue, sir. You see, they say all people feel uneasy when their groups are mentioned in the proverb. If you are very aware that the processes through which this constitutional amendment will be made are lawful, why would you even question? But again, I am saying this, and I want to be on record. I am saying this authoritatively, and I am saying this as the leader of the opposition that will not fall for anything that is not lawful. Have this at the back of your mind. Have this at the back of your mind. You said you will go ahead. You will not stop anybody from going ahead. No, I'm making my position very clear. I'm not reacting to other things, but this should have constituted part of my statement. I'm rounding up. I'm rounding up. I'm rounding up. I'm rounding up. Yes. Am I shouting? Am I shouting? Okay, I will not shout again. So, like I said, we are making history. The 6th Parliament of the Second Republic is making history to touch the most important document in this country. Let us be judicious and let us make sure that we do the right thing for the people of this country. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much, Ida, and for the statement. And I want to assure you, sir, as the leader of the policies in Parliament and on behalf of the Speaker, all right, that this process will go as prescribed in law and procedure, and under my watch, that the right things will be done. I'll give you that assurance, and I want this public, of course, for the MPs, we are part of the process, but I want the public to give that trust that this process will go and it will be peaceful in this Parliament. I want to give you that assurance. I'm giving you that assurance. This process, even this morning as we are seated here, the 2 leaders is with their approval. Leaders, sir, please, just your attention. All right, no, I have to go over it, sir. All right, for us to have a privilege today, the 2 of them agreed, and Mr. Speaker agreed. I only directed the AG that he has to be here today to do his presentation. All right, after first reading. No, that's I'm talking. We are still talking. He's on it. All right, sir. All right. AG, you are reminded. AG, you are reminded the last discussion we had before coming here. All right. No, sir. Let's not take that way, sir. Thank you, sir. So the assurance is to you, the public, those that are not members of Parliament. All right, that even for the privilege to be held today, the 2 of them agreed. All right, that is how open and participatory it has been, and that is the way it will remain. The reason why we have not slated date for the second reading, I had a discussion with him. We've not been able to have a clear-cut timetable. I'm bringing up that to show the level of transparency that has been. All right, it's because I discussed with him and he could not give me any clear-cut timetable for the APC's lower level election because he want their members to be fully participatory. All right, so I'm going to I have discussed with Mr. Speaker. I'm explaining to the general public, not necessarily to MPs because you are aware. So what we did was to do the first reading and to leave the second reading a little bit relaxed. One, the public will be able to make their input, and at the same time, as they give us their timeline, we'll be able to slate when we'll be having our second reading, which is actually the most important stage. No, he hasn't been able to give me a clear timeline. All right. So why I'm explaining this, and for the general public, for all those that will be going over radio, being constitutional experts, please do this clerk a favor. Put it in writing in a position. People have received something like 3 or 4. I'll be reacting to them. I'll be writing a special letter of thank you to thank them that they've put their opinions on paper, and we appreciate it. And I'm going to get all of those documents photocopy, 2 copies, or perhaps 4 copies, 1 set for the 2 leaders, 1 for the chairperson, and another that I will keep with myself. And I've also promised the legislative chair this morning, I'm going to make a summary of those key recommendations so that it will ease his own work and get it across to him. But if you are also a member of the public and you want to make input, but you cannot read and write, I'll be announcing that. Our media team will be out, gets to them, they will sit down with you, you explain your story, and they will write it down. And it will be part of the process. We will not be having time to be listening to every conversation that you'll be doing on the radio or on the television. Our media team will attend, but we are going to make this as open and transparent. The reason why I read the portion of the standing orders this morning, SO 47-2, all right, because they've taken out their time from their busy schedules to be part of this process. It would have been unfair for them to come. Some of them might want to make statements and they are not given the platform for them to make statements, but you know it's a name. It is not mandatory. So I'm leaving that to the chair and the AG's office to say, okay, we want to, apart from honorable members, we want to hear this person, we want to hear this person. But this is the assurance. This process is going through as prescribed in the Constitution and the standing orders. All right? After the second reading, it will be committed to the legislative committee, wherein, or maybe they will decide they want to get a committee of the whole house. If there are any amendments, like for instance, reference to trench and entrenched clauses included, you can just expunge it at committee stage. Heaven and hell is not going to come down. The sky is still going to remain up, and this constitution will go through. But I will assure you, it will be peaceful and it will go according to procedure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frank. Thank you very much, Leader of the Opposition, for reminding us about some of the laws surrounding this process. And also thank you very much, Mr. Clark, for the assurance that Parliament will adhere to the rules or the laws surrounding this whole process. If I'm to re-echo the remarks of the Leader of the Opposition, this is a defining moment in our history. We consider ourselves very lucky to be part of this process. You don't review or amend the Constitution on a daily basis. But the big question is, how do you want to be remembered in this process? It is not an APC constitution nor an SLPP constitution. It's the Constitution of Sierra Leone. So I want to encourage each and every one of us to keep an open mind when we approach this process. It's very important. We are setting the stage now for an inclusive society and pave the way for the new generation of game changers. So I want to encourage all of us to keep it in the manner we're trying to do right now. And I strongly believe by the end of the day, our representation will re-echo the thoughts of our people. Thank you very much again, Leader of the Opposition. I'll now call on the Leader of Government Business, Honorable Matthew Sanuma from Bukaka-Jama and Bulamayama. I hope the people from Bukaka-Jama and Bulamayama are watching this program.
I don't know. We are very IT savvy. We are more than people of Bukaka-Jama and Bulamayama. My constituents are so entrenched in following what we are doing in this parliament. Chairman Cholif and my counterparts, you wanted to talk about the cattle and the animal. I was carefully listening when he said anything different from not putting us together, we just recuse ourselves. I perfectly agree with you, sir. Introduce, sir. I want to opportunity to thank you for your speech and salute you for being cooperative in working for the progress of this country. Let me start on existing protocols by singling out my former colleague, a brother, and a comrade. A comrade with 2 pens. One is black and the other one is red. So I have to take one. Chairman Maduba. From that, I follow the existing protocols. Mr. Chairman, we are on record from the 5th Parliament to the 6th Parliament for progressive laws. We are not on record for abrogating the rules of procedure. We are not. I have evidences to the effect. laws that we have passed. Today, people are bluffing it all over the country, beyond Sierra Leone. I engaged my previous counterpart, Honorable Chairman Manuba, in succeeding in passing most of those difficult legislations, because we believe that Sierra Leone is for all of us. Our similarities are far greater than our differences. And Sierra Leone is the only hope for the country we can do the things that we believe in, to have progressive laws that we can transform the trajectory of this country. When we started the repeal of Part 5 of the Public Order Act, people said we are not going to do it. We don't mean it. We succeeded in repealing it. Some people lambasted us, but today we are praised right across it at the international platform that we did the rule and laws, we ratified, we repealed Part 5 of the Public Order Act, the obnoxious laws. We are able to do so because we put Sierra Leone first at that moment. People are against, some people are for. Not everybody will follow us. We have our differences, but we should be futuristic. We are the way to take this country. That is why all of us are here today. We have decided to form this guideline using Section 47 as stated by the Clerk of Parliament. Here elucidated clearly on those points, understanding others. But we need the stakeholders engagement. It's not anything new. The central offense is art. We started with that as a progressive law under the administration of the opposition, Chairman Manuba. We have people coming in there. The last minute we wanted to pass the law. They said they have their opinions, they have something to input. We look at it, it was important, and that was included. And you see this part of that law. But there are things that we still need to do. Mr. Chairman, I just highlighted a few of those things that we have done during the progressive laws. We came down to the Give Act. Then the women are bluffing it all over the place. They came, these are proposals. This is what we have is a proposal. Even if they are put in the entrenched clause, when we go to the chamber, we just remove. We know the rules of procedure. This is a government motion. It's a proposal from the minister. We can even decide not to even consider any of these clauses and stay where we are. Because we are progressive, we are open-minded people. We have allowed the public using 47, understand the others, to make sure that we discuss this bill in the interest of Sierra Leone. Another point, when they give it act, when they give it bill came, there was no provision for women's empowerment. There was no provision. We had to amend the IMC law. The act was amended to accommodate some of the things that you are going to come with. If you repeal, what will be the other laws that you depend on if your civil liberty is abused? We don't want people to say, oh, there is lacuna, we have done this. What about other citizens who are exposed to these people? We have to be professional journalists. We came into this hall, we have some brouhaha between one stakeholder and the chair. That is natural. We settled it. But we did not take our eyes off the ball. We succeeded in having a reformed IMC Act that accommodates everybody, and also the repeal. In the Give Act we have today, there's no provision to empower women. There's no provision to empower women. We did that principally because you can't be one to empower women and you deviated completely for what you proposed to us. Said, Thank you. Today, that's what we have. But there are more to it which are yet to accept. We came with a PPLC Act. We have done some constitutional amendments. And today, PPLC is active. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for putting us on the right track. Finding both political parties trying to exchange words of violence. What we did not succeed to do is to finance smaller parties. You cannot get all. But we are able to come to terms with the opposition, with the paramount chiefs, to say we can do A, B, and C. Where we are today, we have both former AGs with us. They are sitting together, Fitzgerald and MLT Momelani. Thank you very much for your contribution you have in this document in front of us. Thank you. Coming to the Public Elections Act, because this more we have elections reforms in this constitutional process we have. They came with 30% quota. We are struggling with it. In fact, me and the opposition leader, Honorable General Baduba, people are calling us, lambasting us, trying to be very selfish in our thinking, and we are not nationalistic, we are not patriotic when we are about to do the Public Elections Act 2022. We are on it for 2 months. They called me. I cannot say the words that they told me exactly. But I used their form of abusive language to me to educate them. I was able to convert some to understand what we are doing. Some you cannot change them. Romans say you don't change, you don't give new name to old dog. But I use that platform to change most of them. And they are my friends today. Look, the fear of doing this, we discussed that there's a way we can do it. Section 58 of the Public Elections Act. We wanted to have women representation directly elected to parliament and local councils over 30% or beyond. So we took 2 positions into considerations. One is to have the women directly elected with over 30%, both at parliamentary level and local councils, as the presidency because of executive power, which we cannot take from him, but to encourage him in the Gimme Act to consider giving women 30% quota at the minimum rate for positions coming from the executive. That's what we are seeing today working. It is working. And when we use the section 58 of the Public Election Act 2022, Parliament, directly elected members of Parliament, we have over 30%. We got that one right. Councils, we have 30%. We got that one right. So it's a proposal like this nature. We need to open our minds. We need to come with contributions so that we can change the trajectory of our political thinking. Let us think for the interest of Sierra Leone, not for ourselves. Let us be clear on that. For me, I have read this document over and over. I can even quote pages associated here. I have played with it. But I'm very happy for us to have it. I like controversial issues. It makes me stronger. But let me assure you, there is no underhand gain in this business. This is part of what we are doing. We have done consultations at different levels. This is purely for members of parliament to understand the trajectory we are taking for the particular law to be enacted. It is a move to transform our election systems. We have all gone through turbulent times. The only thing that divides us as a country is politics. It's politics. And we, some of us, We are using these reforms to change our thinking about how do we handle politics in this country. That is why nobody can deviate me from my friendship and my brotherhood join Omajuba, the APC and SLPP. It has nothing to do with our political thoughts. That's why I was able to use my friendship as a brother to look at Sierra Leone to do the reforms. Likewise, I'm doing with my honorable member, Abu Kabu. A comrade and a brother. We can, all right. We cannot allow those who are thinking selfishly to drive us to a crazy debate. Or we can shape the lives of our people who we represent effectively here by doing the right thing. Open consultations. Let me assure you, this is not new. This is not the end. As the clerk said, we are going to have continuous deliberation on these things with the stakeholders. You have your positions. Bring your positions to the clerks of parliament. We can deliberate on them. We come to legislative. After the debate, we return back to sit to look at clause after clause, and we go back to debate some of these clauses. We know the rules of procedure in enacting constitutional instruments. You know very well. We cannot surrogate that one for anything. But let me assure you that we are being a very progressive parliament and will continue to do so. And as parliament, we don't live because we are APC, SLPP, and the paramount chiefs. We are family here. I'm fully aware that the public don't like parliament, but they would like to use the parliament to divide us to fix chaos. We cannot allow that one. I will bend backwards. Even it costs us 100 times, the SLPP and the APC and the paramount chiefs to continue to deliberate on this document, to have a consensus document where we can stand, so that it can benefit Sierra Leone, not any single political party. We are doing this in the interest of Sierra Leone. So those who have listened for a lot of social media discussions, we are starting somewhere. We have had white paper from APC and SLPP. We are still moving. We are not going to throw them on the table. We look at them one after the other. Those that are supposed to go for referendum, the AG and the government, they will take care of that one. If it comes to us, we'll follow the proper rules of procedure. So that is the assurance I'm giving you. That this is not the end today. Even if you are not given the opportunity to talk here today or to make your contributions, you have a bigger platform to write to us. Let us make our position nationalistic. Not because we are looking at it, now go benefit APC, now go benefit SLPP. Don't look at that way. If you come to me with that argument, you will not succeed. Because I will not listen. So I thank you very much for coming. I thank you for your contributions, especially for the AG. You have been very magnanimous in dealing with this document. It's not easy to have it. As I said, the public don't like parliament. That is clear. Because when we are talking about our welfare, the stakeholders will go after us. You cannot talk about city fees. We forget about this document and go after us. We talk about medical. But you like to follow my MPs. But you don't have a vote. Not even taking consideration the MP is sick, is flying abroad. But what matters to us, not how you feel about us, not what you say about us, but the intrinsic value in us, representing our people with honesty, with fairness and diligence. We will continue to serve this nation, irrespective of the innuendos and aspersions against parliament. We will stand tall to do progressive laws. We will stand tall to unite this nation, not by rhetoric, but by the rule of law. Thank you very much for coming. May Lord bless us all.
Thank you very much, leader of government business. It's clear from your remarks that strong leadership is critical for constitutional review process, especially when you have to navigate complex political transition, and also to ensure that the resulting document from this exercise has the legitimacy it deserves. I think a well-led, transparent, and inclusive process will ensure that kind of public ownership we want for this. And I strongly believe that we're going to achieve that. Again, it's an issue of active participation and total involvement of each and every one of us. Sierra Leone is the bigger picture. Let's remember that. Thank you very much, again, leader of government business. I'll now call the Attorney General and Minister of Justice for his remarks. Mr. Alpha Sisi Esquire.
Thank you. To the leader of government business, Honorable Matthew Samima, leader of the opposition in parliament, Honorable Abdul Kabo, I must say both of whom are also my comrades of the Almighty Radicals Club. Yes, well, the leader of the opposition is Nigerian. But of course, there are very senior comrades of the Radicals Club seated to my right, former dictator of the Radicals Club, Joseph Fitzgerald Kamara, JFK senior comrade, Cheroma Juba, former deputy speaker of parliament, and then of course, my elder brother and predecessor, former Attorney General Mohammed Lamin Tarawali. So this to say that outside APC and SLPP circles, we still meet in other places to discuss moving this country forward. So, and also to, of course, the chair of the commissioner of the PPRC, former dictator Quiver Amara, also a comrade. So it's a big family. And then, of course, the clerk of parliament, Mr. Kamo Conte, also a comrade. So there are others seated. And of course, the Minister of Information and Civic Education, also a comrade. So it's a big family. It's a big family. Well, he's my junior comrade. But also to acknowledge the Deputy Leader 1 and Deputy Leader 2 of Government Business, the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, the Chair of the Legislative Committee of Parliament, the former Speaker of the ECOWAS Parliament, Honorable Members of Parliament, Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Her Worship, the Mayor of Freetown City Council, our civil society partners who have also been crucial to this process, our development partners, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thanks to the leadership of Parliament for the opportunity to do this presentation here today. I'd like to say that this is part of doing the people's work. Mr. Chair, we are glad that this bill before you has generated significant public interest. When we decided to move beyond the traditional means of gazetting bills in Sierra Leone by posting an electric version of this bill to the public, this is exactly what we anticipated: public interest, public discourse, and public feedback. We are glad to have accomplished that. For us as government, we do not want these public engagements to end with the pre-legislative hearing we have today. We want this to be the beginning. We want these discussions to move into the days and weeks ahead as we strive to produce a constitution that will work for the people of this country. In the days and weeks ahead, we look forward to having constructive discussions with various groups, with our civil society partners, political parties, women's groups, youth groups, our development partners, other marginalized groups, including persons with disabilities, and with the broader Sierra Leonean public. This is because this is just a bill. It is not meant to be the final document that becomes law. It is meant to lay the foundation for broader public discourse and feedback. And that is what we will do with this process. As a people, Mr. Chair, we should embrace this moment as a historic opportunity for democratic renewal in our country. Our country is embarking on several reforms. We are in the middle of major electoral reforms at a time when we are trying to conclude a long-standing constitutional review process. These are major undertakings that we must all embrace and accompany to completion. I like to say that, like a running train on a track, these reforms must go hand in hand. His Excellency President Julius Maada Bio remains steadfast in his commitment to conclude our nation's constitutional review process, a journey spanning over 2 decades. This is not merely about legal reform. It is about strengthening the bedrock of our democracy. The President has made it clear, finalizing this process is central to our governance agenda, alongside transformative reforms in the public sector and other pillars of the Big Five. The reforms we discuss in this bill come as a result of our acknowledgement of the challenges we have faced in our electoral and governance architecture. While we acknowledge these challenges, we must also note that as a nation, we stand on the shoulders of a remarkable democratic journey, one forged in the fires of adversity and sustained by our unyielding commitments to peace. Since emerging from the darkness of civil war, Sierra Leone has held 5 consecutive democratic elections, each a milestone in our collective journey. Among these, 2 historic transfers of power to the opposition in 2007 and 2018. These stand as towering achievements that we should celebrate. Because these were not merely political events, they were triumphs of national character, proving that our democracy is not just functional, but it's maturing. For a country that went through decades of one-party dictatorship, subjected to military coups brought to its lowest ebb as a result of civil war, the journey we have walked to this point, though not perfect, is one that we must celebrate. Yet, let us be candid that no democracy is without its trials. We have navigated several challenges as a nation. We've had to deal with election disputes, we've had to deal with institutional gaps, and yes, we have had to deal with moments of polarization. But the truth we must cling to is this: and these challenges are not indictments of failure. They are the necessary growing pains of a democracy finding its footing. They remind us that democracy is not a destination, but a continuous act of collective will and refinement. This is precisely why in this process of constitutional making, we have adopted one irreducible principle: listening. Listen not just to the powerful, but to the market woman in Waterloo who fears that her vote doesn't count, to the youth activist in Bo who is demanding a seat at the table, to the traditional leader in Kono who is bridging old traditions and new aspirations, and to the young girl in Makeni yearning for fairness and equity in decision-making. Their voices, your voices, did not just inform the process, they drove the process. The national conversation we have now was born from this very ethos that electoral systems must serve people, not power. Today, we confront a pivotal choice. Will we settle for systems that merely function, or will we demand systems that inspire trust, amplify voices, and endure? It is my hope, and truly the hope of His Excellency the President, that we will opt for the latter. Mr. Chairman, kindly allow me to walk us through the journey we have walked as a nation to get to this point. I'm very pleased that 2 of my predecessors are seated here today, and we have asked the 2 of them to be together because they have been very integral to this process. They have both been shepherds of the long-standing constitutional review process. They have both managed white papers in 2017 and 2021, and I'm referring to the attorneys general before me, Joseph Fitzgerald Kamara, commonly known as JFK, former Attorney General and Minister of Justice, and flag bearer aspirant for the All People's Congress Party, and Mohammed Lamin Tarawali Esquire, former Attorney General and Minister of Justice. Both, as I said earlier on, very senior comrades of the Red Cross Club. This nation owes the two of you a debt of gratitude for the way you have managed this process, and it has been an incredible honor to continue to learn from you, to be inspired by the work that you do, and that you have remained committed to work with us to take this work to completion. Solomon Ekumaberewa, and then moving on to all the holders of this office. May their souls rest in perfect peace. I also want to pay special tribute to the Deputy Minister of Justice, Madam Satiu Sako, whose commitment to make sure that we have a gender-responsive constitution has been inspiring. Both intend to have detailed engagement with women's groups to make sure that this constitution works for women of Sierra Leone. I also want to pay tribute to two persons who have been integral to this process, I would say, who are authors of a significant part of the bill that we have before us. The co-chairs of the tripartite process. Dr. Emmanuel Gaima, who represented the government of Sierra Leone as co-chair, and Dr. Kalifala Mara, who represented the All People's Congress in the tripartite process. I say this to let you know that the bill we have before us has two major sources. One, the Kawan constitutional review process managed by two AGs before me, the two co-chairs I have just mentioned. There's nothing else that government has added to this bill outside these two processes. I think I have been very public to say, yes, there are one or two provisions that have been amended, which is really what governments do, right? With white papers, you accept, you reject, or you accept with modifications. So we've been very public about this, and these will also form the basis of discussions that we will have in the weeks ahead. And credit also goes to our civil society and development partners who have continued to support this process. Your input has been crucial, and we look forward to continued engagement with you on this. I like to say that at a time when people are quick to talk about polarization in governance, when people are quick to talk about the things that we disagree on, when people are quick to point to the fact that one government says one thing and then a political party opposes because of the messenger, I like to say that the constitutional review process is one thing that we all agree on. because every government since the war came to an end has worked diligently to take this process to completion. From the government of late President Kaba to that of former President Nkrumah, and then now President Bio. So really, this is an example of continuity in government, and so we must embrace it. So, Mr. Chair, kindly allow me to provide some historical context. Because in Lome, we agreed that the 1991 Constitution as framed was not sufficient to prevent a backsliding. And so we continued in the report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the mechanism set up following the end of the conflict in 2002. And so the process was first started by late President Atnati Kaba in 2007 and was subsequently picked up by former President Ernest Bai Koroma, who constituted the Justice Edmund Kawan Constitutional Review Committee. And I'd like to note that as we hold these discussions here today, we do so during the very week, 2 days ago from today, that the architect of this process, the late Justice Kawan, departed this world for the world beyond. And so with your leave, Mr. Chair, I will want to call on this gathering to observe a moment of silence for him. May his soul, as I just stated, the Constitutional Review Committee, set up by former President Ernest Bai Koroma and chaired by the late Justice Edmund Kawan, had 8 members from all shades of life: political parties, civil society, youth groups, women's groups, journalists, etc., etc. The committee itself operated from 2013 to 2017 with technical and financial support from UNDP, UN Women, United Kingdom, European Union, and then the Ministries of Foreign Affairs of Kenya and Ghana. So really the process has been as participatory and as inclusive as possible and has been done in the national interest. The figures are there to speak to it. The 8-member Justice Edmund Kawan nationwide, over 10,000, had 133 stakeholder engagements with women, youth, political parties, paramount chiefs, local councillors, CSOs, media, lawyers, etc. Consulted with 198 MDAs, commissions, religious groups, and other institutions, had 80 expert engagements on key constitutional issues, received over 150 position papers from political parties, MDAs, and various groups, had over 20,000 hours of airtime over the media, included live debates, jingles, theme songs, etc. Distributed over 70,000 that had. So the Kawan Constitutional Review Committee handed its report to former President Nkrumah in January 2017, and in June 2017, the government of former President Ernest Bai Nkrumah issued a white paper in which it accepted some recommendations and rejected some. And then there was a transition in government. Following his election in 2018, His Excellency President Julius Maada Bio decided to pick up the process from where it was left in 2017, after Justice Kawan submitted the committee's report to former President Nkrumah. And in March 2021, the government of His Excellency President Bio issued a second white paper on the Justice Edmund Kawan Constitutional Review Committee report. The white paper reflects the contributions, aspirations, and determination of the people of Sierra Leone to improve and sustain the rule of law, lasting peace and human development. Recently, a few months ago, when I had a meeting, had a discussion with the National Women's Conference, their memo indicated that they had identified 16. At the meeting, I made clear to them that in fact government had acted on the remaining 4. So you can see that, and the significance we has also influenced the process. During the Universal Periodic Review in May 2021, political parties. And under the leadership of Dr. Gaima and Dr. Mara, we moved across this country to gather the views of Sierra Leoneans. The 80 recommendations we agree on in the tripartite report are the products of this national exercise. And some of these recommendations touch on constitutional amendments. As a government, we agreed that these will be added to the recommendations in the Justice Edmund Kawan Constitutional Review Committee report. And this is what we have in this bill. If anyone tells you that the provisions in this bill are the creation of government alone, they have lied to you. The provisions in this bill are exclusively the product of the Justice Kawan Constitutional Review Committee report, set up by former President of the tripartite report and its recommendations, co-chaired by Dr. Gaima and Dr. Mara. Government has not added anything, but I've been very public to state that yes, there are 1 or 2 provisions that government has amended, which is the right thing to do, but they are not set in stone. That is the essence of these engagements, the essence of these consultations. And then, of course, at the end of this exercise, Parliament will determine what will go into the Constitution. So I like to say that we have not done this in hiding, but to also say that a lot of people trying to get political mileage on this bill have received its content since last year. The contents of this bill are not new to many of the stakeholders who are not speaking about it. This has been in the custody of several of the people who now speak publicly about provisions in this bill. And these are discussions we could have had even before getting to this stage. So I think let's approach this with the honesty it deserves. Among several consultations, the last set of public consultations, and that's not to count the ones that have happened in my office. On the 28th of October last year, we had consultations that were public with electoral management bodies. On the 30th of October, we have consultations with political parties on the legislative proposals. And there were other such consultations before now. As a matter of fact, I think my brother and comrade, the leader of the opposition in Parliament, have represented the APC in the last consultation that we had on the 30th of October. And then we have had the same with civil society organizations and the media sector. We had such a meeting on the 31st. These are additions to what we had before now, and the engagements we have had across the country, and engagements that have happened in my office, during which we have been very open and have shared the presentation that I'll make here today. I also mentioned that we have had discussions with women groups where we assured them that the 16 recommendations in the Women's Manifesto will be part of the new constitution. But I'd like to emphasize, Mr. Chair, honorable members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, that these consultations have not come to an end. They must continue in the days and weeks as we strive to make this a better document that will work for Sierra Leone. Of course, persons who have been part of this process, should continue to engage and make this better. But to refuse to take ownership for what we have done together, and then to oppose this just because it is led by government or to build political mileage, it's not leadership. To mislead the people we seek to govern for political mileage is not leadership. So as we take this process to a conclusion, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, let us be guided by certain things. Let us note that Sierra Leone has transformed significantly in recent decades. Our demographics, our economy, and our social dynamics have all evolved. Therefore, our constitution must keep pace with these changes. A new constitution will better capture the realities and aspirations of our people, ensuring that our governance structures and legal provisions are fit for today's Sierra Leone and the future we envision. Revising our outdated sections ensures our legal framework is robust and relevant, is capable of addressing modern challenges and fostering a just society. We pride ourselves in being a tolerant nation that puts national unity over ethnicity, over religion, and over political affiliation. For us to show that unity. Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude by saying that this should not and will not be a rushed process. Constitutions are meant to outlive us, and they must reflect the views and aspirations of the people of Sierra Leone. The Constitution must be owned by them. We acknowledge that no bill is perfect. That is why it is called a bill. It is our hope that the legislation that comes out of this process will be better than the bill that we discussed today and in the weeks to come. On that note, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to transition to going through specific proposals that are in this field, with your leave.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. And I want to thank you for giving us an in-depth view of this constitutional review journey. And in your remarks, you've clearly reminded us that this is a product of the Justice Cowan White Paper, the tripartite agreement, and of course, consultative engagements around the country. So it is a document for Sierra Leoneans. And I think as a parliament, it's also our responsibility to ensure that we come out with a document that will meet the expectations of Sierra Leoneans. What type of document is that? A document that will help us to sustain the peace we build. A document that will help us build national cohesion. A document that will help us maintain the rule of law. A document that will help promote human development. So the document is now in the hands of Parliament. But it's good to remind us that the discussion will continue. As representatives of the people, we're open to all suggestions, position papers that will come from the public, to ensure that we incorporate them into this document and that will reflect their voices. So I think now we are going to proceed to the presentation proper. We're going to look at, I don't know the method you're going to use, but maybe provision after provision. And then members will have the opportunity to ask questions and maybe proffer suggestions. And then, of course, maybe seek clarification where necessary. So, AG, the floor is yours for the presentation. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you.
This company, you don't put hand.
Thank you, Chair,
But you can't be a
and leadership of Parliament. So what I'm going to do is to go through a PowerPoint presentation of the provisions in the bill. And I'll provide context to some, and where possible, I'm able to see what is from the current process of the tripartite process, and then of course leave it up for questions. First is to say what we try to do with this process. After the tripartite report was submitted to the Excellency the President, 80 recommendations agreed to. We took out the recommendations that touch on constitutional amendments. But then we have always been very clear that the broader constitutional review process is a subject of a long-standing government commitment. And of course, as I just mentioned, going back to the days of the late President Kaba and continuing to this point. You know, so I like to say that really we've been running a relay. You know, wherein one government has been handing this baton to another government. The only thing is that, the current government has made a commitment that we will not transition this baton to another government. So what we did was to put, first let me say, this subject of long-standing commitments by government. And so we've always been very clear that the tripartite process as important as it is, was never meant to undo existing government commitment to broader reforms, including the constitutional review process. It was meant to complement existing or ongoing reforms being managed by government. And so when we took out the recommendations that touch on constitutional amendments and paired them with the recommendations that have been made by the current Constitutional Review Committee, we were fortunate to find out that a lot of the proposals really align. They speak to each other. They do not contradict each other. But then there were proposals made by the tripartite committee, which were not in the Cowan reports, but also some proposals made by the Cowan reports, which had not been captured by the tripartite process. But they really did not contradict each other. And so what we did was to prepare a document that laid out how these proposals speak to each other, which one comes from tripartite or from Cowan, and put them in a document that, again, since last year, has been shared with several stakeholders in this room. So that's just to say that is how we choose to approach it. But again, like I said, this is part of broader efforts to conclude the constitutional review process. So we note that that process cannot be completed in January or in February. And so what we agreed on with all stakeholders, what we agreed on was that because elections are time sensitive, you do not want to undertake electoral reforms, or you do not want to amend provisions that touch on the conduct of elections close to elections. We agreed, all of us who have been part of this process, to take out the constitutional proposals that touch on elections and bring them to Parliament as a separate bill. We have laid this out as the procedure that will follow. That is also because there are other reforms taking place, right? We have subjected the Electoral Commission for Sierra Leone to a functional management review, and then we are in discussions based on recommendations in the tripartite process, as well as consultations with a broader set of stakeholders that we will review the relevant laws that touch on elections, Public Elections Act, the Political Parties Act, etc. And so to do all of those reviews, it is important to take the amendments that touch on elections to completion, so that these, once they go through Parliament, will speak to the reforms that get into the various pieces of legislation on the conduct of elections. But then, once we're done with this, we'll now continue with the broader constitutional review process. But then we'll have taken the elections proposals out of the way. This is not something that became public overnight. This is something that we have discussed. And matter of fact, lots of people, including persons in this room, asked questions of me up to last year as to why this bill was not in Parliament last year. But then we said, in fact, we called for the last set of consultations in October, just to inform of this process. And then we said technical details. We had to put Mr. Thompson, our draftsman, under immense pressure to get this bill together. But the night here, some people have again said that it is rushed, including those who were urging me to bring it to Parliament last year.
So, just sorry for the interruption. Can we please make yes, when we go close by close, we also have the opportunity to get email from any
thank you for that, Chair. I really just wanted to know why we have the constitutional amendments on elections and how we transition to the broader constitutional review after this. So please let's go to the first slide. So one, it is recommended that the Electoral Commission be renamed to National Electoral Commission for Sierra Leone. We are all used to calling it NEC. And so it is proposed, not by government,
as mama, I always want waiting best for me picking them, especially when it comes waiting them for eat and drink. Now this make all they choose Sarah juice because they make them from with local foods them and nutritious and it gets less sugar than the other drinks them. Not to me say so.
We last test show say Sierra juice gets 50% less sugar than the other drinks them.
Yeah, so this we propose will move will be a new provision in the constitution on inclusive search and nomination committee. Now the current system, of course, we know is that the president appoints after consulting with the leaders of all registered political parties. But this has been a subject of debate. We welcome that debate. Political parties want to be represented instead of transitioning this to other bodies. There's concerns about how this will be constituted, whether the president appoints or whether the group send their nominees. I think let's have those discussions. And this really lays out the mandates of the research committee to develop a job description, conduct a transparent selection process, and submit the shortlist to the president for appointment, and then the president appoints from that shortlist to go to parliament. And there's also a new provision that there should not be a requirement, professional and academic requirement for persons serving as Chief Electoral Commissioner to hold an advanced degree with 15 years of experience in electoral processes, public governance, law of policy, you are proven integrity, eligible for parliament, not a minister, not a member of parliament, public officer, or over 65. And then, of course, same for the other commissioners, but to say to hold a degree, of course, all of these from recognized universities accredited in Sierra Leone, and then for the other commissioners, 10 years experience and the various fields that we have mentioned, and of course, same formats as I described in previous slide. And then there'll be a transitional provision, really to see if persons hold office or positions within the commission right now, and then this provision comes into effect, they will continue to serve for the remainder of their terms. Then after that, subsequent appointments will be made in line with this provision. And then we said the same procedure will apply to the appointment of the chairperson of the PPRC. Same as I've described in the previous slides. And then, of course, same transitional provision. Then a proposal to rename the PPRC, the Constitution, to read as Political Parties Registration and Regulation Commission. So this is the other provision out of the tripartite process recommendation 70 that proposed to deregister political parties that did not win local or national elections after 2 successive general elections. But then, of course, we've said that this should be considered alongside the functions of a political party under Section 35 of the Constitution, where the functions extend beyond winning elections. Again, I want to particularly put this in context. Yes, it came out of the tripartite committee. Because we did not want to appear to be deleting recommendations, that is why we put this here, while stating government's position on this, which is that political parties exist for more than just winning elections. Political parties exist to also represent the views of the minority. Political parties exist to hold government accountable on several other issues, and so that is government's position on this. So whilst it was a tripartite recommendation, I think we've been very public that it's not a proposal that government is really going to support. We have taken a principle position that is here, collecting responsibility from the tripartite process of coming into this being. This is not our position. I think we'll be very clear on that. And then we have said that the provision in the Human Act should be reflected in the Constitution. This was a recommendation in the current report. It was a recommendation made by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It was one of the 16 recommendations that women's groups submitted as being important to them, and it is one of those things that government is committed to and agree that the provisions in the Human Act should be reflected in the Constitution. And so we will talk about the building blocks to ensure that, yes, the other systems in place, other legislation reflects this, including constitutions in for the political parties themselves. And this on the use of census data. That the Constitution be amended, Section 38, to say only data from the senior census will be used for electoral purposes. And that where the final report of the senior census is published at or less than 24 months before a general election, that data from that census should not be used for the purposes of drawing constituency boundaries for use in that general election. And I think this is where we have also said, as a government, and we work with members of parliament, we're very open if they are on the need for a transitional clause for this particular provision. We're very open to that. It's something that we support. I think we'll be very public about that. And then, of course, these are the technical details of that amendment. It is also proposed that sections 41 and 42 of the Constitution be amended to remove the requirement for political party nomination, to facilitate independent candidature for the presidency. We know it's a thorny issue, but we also note that it was a recommendation made in the Common report. It was a recommendation made by the tripartite committee, and also it's reflected in the one of 16 recommendations made in the Women's Manifesto. Of course,
Other honorable members, please.
Of course,
Thank you very much.
Of course, we have also said in the bill that yes, the concern that this might open the floodgates, and then you have a lot of independent candidates, which will make the process hard to manage. It's a legitimate concern, and so that is why in the bill that we have here, we have put in certain conditions. One, of course, we do not want someone losing flag bearership elections in a particular political party and then overnight just transitions to being an independent candidate. So yes, I think good members of parliament will have to put a clause on. We have said that the person should not be a member of a political party. So I think the timing on that will be good to do. We have also said that the person must demonstrate sufficient financial and community support. Community support, and as prescribed by law, that will be prescribed in a separate law by parliament. And community support we do like you have in certain countries, verifiable registered voters to sign up and take a bet on that candidate. And then we have said financial standing as well to be determined by parliament to see. But we also note that really listening to public discussions or engage with various stakeholders, a financial requirement will eliminate very good and credible presence from the presidency, including women who should be able to participate in this process without these extra roadblocks being created. And that is why, in fact, one of the proposals we have in other legislation is really the removal or reduction of candidacy fees for women, and then of course other for marginalized groups. But yes, that is a provision that we want to have a discussion on and come up with something that will work for the people of this country. So yes, that will. And then we come to section 42.2. Our current system requires a candidate to put 55% of votes in the first round. Then, of course, we have to deal with the challenges of runoff elections. In fact, someone brought to my attention that the runoff elections sometimes are even more problematic than those on the first round of elections. And so, in the constitutional review process, before the tripartite process, yes, it is reflected in the white paper that will move from the 55% threshold. And then, in the tripartite report, it was also recommended that we move from the 55% threshold. Now, when I talk about areas where both processes align, this is really one such area that we move from 55% threshold. Now, the debate has actually been whether it's 50 plus 1 or a simple majority. Say, right? So that has been the question. But then there is also a threshold, because when we discussed this on the tripartite committee, we talked about moving from the 55% threshold But I think we also discussed the need to keep this country together. And so that is why the tripartite report recommended that yes, you move from 55%, but you also have the threshold system. And yes, tripartite recommended that the candidate must also pull at least 25% of total valid votes cast in half of the voting districts. I think I've been very public to say that is what tripartite recommended. So 16 districts, that would be 8. But then when we discussed this, and again, this is not a surprise because I have raised this repeatedly, that we have discussed this in government, with all stakeholders, saying half of the voting district doesn't really solve the problem. Because a candidate and political party will focus on their own stronghold and run the numbers there, which is what we really don't want. That's the problem that we're trying to solve. When we came up with the 25% threshold in half of the voting district, we realized that half doesn't solve the problem. And so our proposal, it's a proposal, I must emphasize. Our proposal in this bill is that reduce from 25% to 20%, but now in 2/3 of the voting districts. And so yes, we want our political parties to have national agendas. We want our political parties and candidates to have national appeals, to look beyond their strongholds. And that is why we reduce the threshold, but then broaden the scope of it to cover 2/3 of the voting districts instead of half of the voting districts. And then this, so the current law actually says 7 days, right? So the tripartite committee recommended that where there is an election dispute, in an election where no candidate has met the threshold under section 42, that's to mean for an election that is meant to go into a runoff, then petitions should be filed within 3 days. If it's an election that will not go into a runoff, then the 7-day window prescribed by law actually is what applies. So this window applies only to an election that will go into a runoff, where a candidate has not met the threshold under section 42 of the Constitution. And then, really, we have had to deal with cases where election petitions take forever to determine, to adjudicate. Right? It's a complaint that we have filed. We have all made. And so, the proposal from the tripartite committee was that the matter must be heard and determined within 14 days. Now, of course, under the leadership of the two gentlemen I mentioned here, we did not just come up with these numbers. We actually also had a session with the judiciary on this to discuss what is feasible, and what will work in the interest of justice. And together, we arrived at these numbers. So they were not arbitrary, they were not the creation of the tripartite committee. But again, as I've said, these are proposals. I think let's all discuss, and then what comes out of Parliament should definitely be better than what we have put in the bill. And yes, this really lays out that yes, a person dissatisfied may file a petition within 3 days. And then once that is filed, if that is filed, the Chief Justice will notify the Commissioner, Chief Electoral Commissioner. That's really Chief Justice is supposed to be representative of the court, and yes, I think at that level, in the context of elections, that's how correspondence should be exchanged in the office of the Chief Justice and that of the Chief Electoral Commissioner, not at the level of one judge informing other members of the Commissioner or the Master and Registrar. But the Chief Justice can give directives for that correspondence to be passed through the other administrative measures that are available within the judiciary. So yes, if no petition is filed, runoff to be held within 14 days of the notification. If petition is filed, the Supreme Court determines that within 14 days, and then of course, if upholds the declaration subject of the petition, then runoff to be held within 14 days. But then, if the court upholds the declaration, but then if the court invalidates the election in totality, then a fresh election will be held within 60 days. And of course, we explained the runoff process here, candidate getting highest and second highest, where two candidates tie in the total number of votes. Those two candidates will go to a runoff. But then if an election is nullified, and then then the election should be reconducted within 60 days, then all persons who have participated in the first round of elections should be able to participate. That is only if there's a petition before a runoff and that election is invalidated. We have this again, amend section 43 and 87 of the Constitution to provide a fixed date for holding elections. Yes, we propose second Saturday in November. It is to say, again, it is not set in stone, it is a proposal. We also acknowledge that prior processes, including the Cowan and the tripartite processes, recommended this between March, April, and May. But yes, it is the proposal of government that the elections be held in November of every 5th year. Now, one thing that I would like to make clear is that we acknowledge that Section 87 and that of 85 are entrenched provisions in our Constitution. But then, as has been explained, when an entrenched provision is amended, it has to go into a referendum. Now, in the public discourse that we have followed, some have said that we have skipped the referendum and brought a bill to Parliament. Actually, we are still on track. This is the procedure. We bring the bill to Parliament. Of course, it's all laid down in Section 108 of the Constitution. And then, once Parliament votes, and the bill gets a vote of 2/3, that is when it goes to referendum. So we're still on track. We haven't attempted to set any process, but to give this impression that because entrenched provisions are included in this bill, that means government is trying to play something. It's misleading. I think it's misleading, and I think as leaders, we should do our homework and then be able to inform the public, especially people who want to govern in the right way. Again, the other thing I must say
we are live on here.
We believe of the leader of government business, SO2, as they say in Parliament. I'll explain this in Creole. Now, government no say, there's section here, so like section 87 and 85 of the Constitution are entrenched provisions. And for entrenched provision, it therefore go to a referendum. But the Constitution very clear. Before you take this to a referendum, you therefore can come forth as a bill na Parliament. Parliament, they debate, a vote, and when that vote they come out, 2/3 in support of the bill or the specific amendments, now that same day it will go to a referendum. So people around the talk say government don't count entrenched provision inside, so they don't go referendum. The referendum now the last step. The bill they come first na parliament debate, a vote. If parliament votes for the bill by 2/3 members of parliament, then it will go to a referendum. So if anybody tell the public say government don't count entrenched clause for don't carry referendum, that person did not do any homework yet. It misleading for the public. And that is why we don't be very open about this process. If person get question, you can ask, we will explain. Because they are always open and ready for provide clarification. And not only for questions. If person gets suggestion, you want count and to me, please do so. And we don't be open to suggestion. We don't take plenty suggestion throughout this process. Now the other thing we are foresee. If anybody tell you say an entrenched provision and a non-entrenched provision not will be inside the same bill for amendment, not to show the constitution say. The constitution will say where you become if entrenched provision dey, you for kick them out first and cancel it. The constitution dey very clearly how you amend the bill. And then how you amend the constitution. And then it asks you if any of them provisions here so you lay them out in the constitution need for be amended. After parliament don't vote, it will go into a referendum. So yes, we are aware. One thing where we don't say very clearly now that when we complete the electoral reform process, the proposals will touch on elections. Once we complete that, we will continue with the broader constitutional review process, we will lead into a referendum. But we just want to make sure, see, all the proposals from both the Cowan report and the tripartite report will touch on elections, we bring them come as one package. Now when Parliament didn't work, then we'll put transition clause and say so let me just wrap this up to say, that is where now Parliament can come and say, get transition provision. So yes, this will be in a certificate. I think the Deputy Speaker of Parliament did an amazing job on 98.1 this morning explaining this process. That if this bill is enacted by Parliament, then the proposals that touch on entrenched clauses in the Constitution will not be part of the certificate that the President will sign. That certificate will only apply to non-entrenched provisions, because we are aware that entrenched provisions will go into a referendum, but at least we'll have taken out the elections related provisions and then we'll move on. I hope that makes it clear. We have also proposed that in case a candidate is standing trial on a criminal charge to which the state is a party 1 year prior to election, such trial must be suspended until after election. This is something we discussed in the Tripartite Committee, and we have put in here. So it's a proposal. But if you look at the bill, we have also put additional layers to this, which is to say, like you have in other countries that we have looked at, persons who have been convicted for certain offenses cannot be made to run for office, but that restriction will expire 5 years after they have served their sentences. So it's not, you don't lock someone out of the electoral process for the rest of their lives. That is an addition I think will be very public, that it's something that we have included in the bill. And then, so this again has generated some form of misunderstanding. So here we're proposing that, and this is actually from the Cowan Constitutional Review Committee report, that we include in the Constitution that the loss of party membership alone will not automatically remove someone from, will not automatically remove a sitting president or vice president. Let's be very honest, that the Samsumana case is a clear example in front of our eyes, because that vote sits with the people. And so we're saying that that decision to remove a sitting president should not be taken by a few actors within the political party. We're saying that if that happens, then the existing provisions in the Constitution should apply. I know, of course, that part of the public discourse has been that we're putting in a new proposal to give Parliament the powers to remove the president. The fact is that that is a power that Parliament has already. So this is a power that Parliament has already. The procedure is laid out in the Constitution. So all we're saying is that if a sitting president or vice president loses his or her membership in the political party that supported their candidacy, doesn't mean that they automatically cease to become president or vice president. It means the procedure laid out in the Constitution already will be triggered. So that way, it is not left in the hands of the president. The option for this will be to continue with the current system, wherein the president can determine whether he or she wants to continue to work with the vice president or not. That is the current system. For them to have that additional oversight as laid out in the Constitution is the right thing to do. It's something that we discussed extensively on the tripartite committee, and then leave it out. And I think, when I say that we should all take ownership for these proposals, these are the things that I mean. That, when they come up in the public discourse, persons who have been part of this process should not be isolating these proposals. I think we should all state why these proposals are included. So that is really what we explain as a gap in the Constitution. So that the provisions apply. This was in the Cowan report after extensive consultations. This is a recommendation that the Cowan committee made, and that is why we have included it in this bill. And then we come to the preferred electoral system. I'd like to say, as Honorable Deputy Speaker of Parliament said today on radio, it looks like it's the elephant in the room. Again, I was very intentional when I said earlier that the tripartite process was not meant to undo existing government reforms or commitments. But what we have from the process that has gone through the hands of successive governments, which is the main constitutional review process that we've been engaged in for over 20 years, the Cowan Constitutional Review Committee, after broad consultations, I gave you the figures. After broad consultations, after looking at best practices in various countries, recommended that this country must transition permanently to the proportional representation system.
Yes, sir.
And It is in the white paper. I also like to say, I also like to say,
Honorable members, please, I also continue to have your attention.
I also like to say that I like to go to the Women's Manifesto because it's an important document. I like to hold on to it. When women's groups commended government in that manifesto, about 12 of their proposals had been included in the government white paper. One such proposal was this. Matter of fact, I like to quote it. It said to ensure peace and cohesion in Sierra Leone. The proportional representation system must be entrenched in the constitution. So these are processes. And so we acknowledge that every electoral system has its own challenges. We acknowledge that yes, the PR system in the last election had its own challenges. Yes, since we transitioned to multi-party democracy from '96 to now, we have had 6 elections. In 3 of those, we have had the first past the post, which of course has had its own problems as well. In 3 of those, we have had the PR system. In '96, we had the wartime model, we like to say, which means the entire country was a single block. And then 2002 and 2023, we used the district block representation system. So just going by our example in Sierra Leone is to say there are different variations of PR. So I think what this is supposed to do is to rally all of us around a table to have real, honest, technical discussions on what kind of PR will work for Sierra Leone. Of course, it has its own challenges. I've gone to communities where persons have said that they were not involved in determining who gets on the list to represent them in their districts or constituencies. That is a challenge that we must address. There are options to address that, right? So let's have all of those discussions. But we also acknowledge that having to deal with the problems that come with by-elections is challenging for this country. The violence that we have to deal with, the economic impact. Matter of fact, since 2023 to this, government has actually saved over 20 million leones, or if you want to put it in the old currency, 20 billion. If you want to put it in dollar terms, it's close to $1 million just by not conducting by-elections. And those are monies that government has been able to direct towards the free quality education, food security, etc.,
Please allow the minister to finish, please.
We look at these processes, like I said, recommended by the current committee after all of these processes. And then, of course, through other mechanisms. Now, how does this compare to the tripartite process? I think it's good to also put that in context. Now, the thing is, the tripartite committee, in the report that we submitted, of the 80 recommendations we agreed on, we did not recommend one system over the other. Yes, we discussed it in tripartite committee, but right at the onset, we knew that we had opposing views on that process. And so what we agreed on and put in the report was that we should convene a national dialogue on a preferred electoral system for Sierra Leone. That's what is in the report. And then, of course, the government took that recommendation very seriously. We agreed to conduct the national dialogue. But because we wanted the dialogue itself to be really participatory, we added another layer. We said, before we get to the national dialogue, let's do countrywide consultations. And so we had expert facilitators, 3 of them, and then other actors who supported the process, international idea with funding from the European Union, and then we put a team together to support this process. That led to consultations, regional consultations across the country, and then that led to the national dialogue. Now for the national dialogue, after the national dialogue, a report was prepared. We received the report. We made the report public last year. We shared the report with various stakeholders. So you say that report is actually the product of the approach that the tripartite committee recommended. But then in that report, the report does not state a preferred electoral system. It does not state one system over the other. The report, in summary, says there are certain people, a significant percentage, that supports the first past the post system, and these are their reasons. And then other set of people, a significant percentage, that support the PR system. But then, noting that if we go with the PR system, we should reduce the threshold. And that another set of people prefer a hybrid system as is applied in certain countries. So that is what we got from the national dialogue. Now, it was going to be unrealistic to now say, all right, the national dialogue has not given us one system over the other, so let's go back to tripartite and go get into a disagreement. We looked at it as though, yes, people have preferences for the various mechanisms, and that there were existing recommendations from the current process. As noted again, the tripartite process was meant to complement the current process, not undo or override it. And in the current committee report, which was accepted in the white paper, it was recommended that we transition to PR. So if the tripartite process didn't make a specific recommendation on that, we will go with what is on the table. Now, that is why we have this. Now, I think another thing that I should take this opportunity to clarify is there's been in the public domain, and also I think presented by leadership of our brothers and sisters in the APC, that the civil society, there's a civil society report or exercise that lays out the percentage of persons who support first past the post at 57, and over 30% support a hybrid system, and that 10% support the PR. And that these persons or the civil society representatives took a vote at that meeting. First, for disclosure purposes, I attended part of the meeting. I delivered the keynote, and I think it's an engagement that I welcome, and it's an engagement that I will welcome on the provisions in this week as we move forward. I delivered my keynote, I left. I know that when my comrade got the mic at the time, I think his first complaint was that all the speakers had spoken in favor of PR. I think they had to make the record straight. But now, I provide this context to say that those figures that several persons have talked about, including the leadership on the APC side, maybe they have seen the report. I have never seen it. And I think as a person who was managing the national dialogue, my office was managing that. I think the understanding was that the report will come to my office and then we'll discuss it. But as I say, I cannot speak to that as to how we got to those numbers. I cannot even make any judgment on those, etc. Because they have never been before me. And so if you ask me why that data or the outcome of those deliberations were not considered in this, it is because, in all honesty, they were never before me or before any member of my team. And so, you can't consider or take on board something that is not before me. And so we went with the Cowan recommendation. But we also note that PR has its problems. Like any electoral system, of the more than 100 countries that practice some form of PR, actually by data, majority of the world's democracies actually practice some form of PR. In fact, there's data that shows that in a lot of countries where people are happy with their governance system, they have a PR system. So for me, the question is, how do we, as a country, get together and discuss the PR system that will work better for us? And so that is why, because we do not have the answers, that is why we have proposed that, yes, elections will be conducted through a system of proportional representation, but we want greater discussion on the mode, the method of nomination, and the conduct of such elections. We all want to get around the table, discuss, and come up with a model that works for Sierra Leone, and then that will be prescribed in a separate law by Parliament. So yes, we've done half part of it, but then I think let us all get together and do the remaining part. But really, when you consider the processes that various governments have managed and where we are, yes, we believe that maybe we should now transition. In our discussion, we should now transition to the kind of PR that we want as a country. That is the discussion. But again, it's a proposal that we've made to Parliament. Let us all discuss it and see first if Parliament agrees that PR is what we'll go by. And if they agree, we all get a discussion as to the kind of PR that will work for this country. And this, what we have here is the provision in 76(1) on whether dual nationals can run for Parliament. Yes, both processes in Cowan and the Tripartite Committee proposed this, right? But we note that it has been a challenging subject for our members.
Order, please. Order, please. If you want to have discussion different from what you are doing, please, you can move out and do so. You need to listen to the presentation. And it's a very good job for all of us. We can use this in our debates. For other tone are so loud that you can't even understand what he's saying now. Yeah, I will agree with that. Go ahead.
So this was actually meant to amend Section 76 and make it possible for our brothers and sisters who have spent time in other countries and during this period have obtained the nationalities of these countries, but who still remain Sierra Leoneans by virtue of our amended Citizenship Act, so be able to run for office if they so wish. But yes, we understand that it's a challenge, but then the impact that this provision has is, as currently framed, when it applies to members of parliament, it also will apply, as has been argued, to persons serving as ministers. And so, of course, the presidency, I think, will be very clear and discussed on the tripartite committee that for the presidency, it should be secret. If you want to run for president and have a nationality of another country, you should let go of that nationality. But then for all the positions, I think we even suggested having safeguards, which is, one will be, if someone wants to run for office, you should provide proof that you have been physically resident in Sierra Leone for like 3 years or 5 years, in Sierra Leone, as someone will say, as someone will say, SO2, make work and swear ground for this. So what we're saying now in this bill, this is an option, but the other option is that if there's a restriction on running for office, that restriction should not apply to appointment as minister. So that is in the bill, but we discussed that. So also there's a provision in our constitution that says a public officer who intends to contest an election and should resign from such office at least 6 months, at least 12 months before the election. On the tripartite committee, we discussed this extensively, and it was our proposal so that will be reduced to 6 months. But then, as government, because we want broad participation, we included another layer, because the question has been, what's the problem that we're trying to solve? And I'd like to give the example of the teacher or the healthcare worker who say in their community, highly respected, mentors to so many people in that community, and they are the persons that community really trusts to represent them in parliament. But this provision will basically say such a person, I'm a teacher, whether secondary school or primary school, we're asking them to live in poverty, not be able to take care of their families for 12 months before running for an election. And so we consider that as government, and so this case should be open. So in addition to reducing it to 6 months, in the bill, we also made some modification. We have amended the Anti-Corruption Act. Before now, everybody was required to declare their assets. But then we amended the act to make it a requirement for persons at a certain grade to declare their assets. And so we are proposing that this requirement should apply to persons who fall in that category, who by the Anti-Corruption Commission Act are required to declare their assets. But all the persons who are below such grade and are not required to declare assets, such as like a teacher or healthcare worker, this provision should not apply to them. That is the proposal that we have made. On the tripartite committee, we also wanted to make emphasis on the neutrality of security forces during elections. And so that is why we proposed an inclusion of language in sections 155 and 165 of the Constitution having to do with the security forces, the police and the military, to say, one, in the exercise of power and their powers, they will not act in a partisan manner, they will not further any interest of a political party or cause, they will not prejudice the political interest or political cause that is legitimate under this Constitution. So that has also been proposed as an amendment. We have 165 minutes to go. So I really think these are the proposals that we have worked with our drafting team to put in this bill. And as I say, they are from these two sources that I've explained. And I'd like to close by emphasizing again that this is a bill. It is a bill for a reason. It is not a perfect document. We want to have broad conversations. We want to have broad discussions and really make sure that what comes out of Parliament is significantly better than what we have submitted to Parliament. I think if we all work together, we can make this. We can make this something that will work for Sierra Leone and we will really strengthen our governance and electoral architecture in this country. Thank you, Chairman and the other officials. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Again, yes. And now with the, I'm happy my Archbishop is here because at this point I think I want to quote from the Bible. I think Matthew 22:14. Many are called. So again, not all of us will be able to ask questions. But like the AG said earlier on, the conversation is going to continue. This is a proposal. It's our collective responsibility to make it a document for the people of Senate. So now, we're going to open the floor for questions. And we want to encourage MPs, because earlier on I told you to carefully take your notes. And this is the time to ask your questions. The floor is open. Just raise your hand in different segments. Just raise your hand.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I want the mic back because you don't have to give the mic when I haven't given instruction who to give the mic to. I'll be mixing it, MPs on the left and of course key stakeholders on the right. So I'll be mixing it in that particular manner. Yes, the chairman, PPRC.
Thank you very much, Chair. And very good afternoon.
Yes, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Chair, let me start on the existing protocols. I'll go straight to the proposal to amend Section 34 of the Constitution as it is right now. Care must be taken to actually fully understand what the Attorney General and Minister of Justice said. The Justice Cowan review of the Constitution had been concluded, but was yet to be adopted. And between that time and today, we had our acts and the Political Parties Act repealed and replaced in 2022. You realize that the change of name for the PPRC was a desire to actually give it regulatory powers. But that one has been called in the 2022 Act. Remember, it is now Political Parties Regulation Commission. So it now has the power not only to register, because regulation includes registration, not only to register, but to regulate. So I would say with humility that that which was sought to be called or to be addressed in the Justice Cowan review of the Constitution, by making that particular recommendation, has been called, and therefore there is no point changing the name from PPRC to PPRC or PPPRC, because it has been now resolved. Now we have regulatory functions, and regulation includes legislation. So it will be repetitive to now call it the Political Parties Registration and Regulation Commission. So that change of name, I'll request be considered in a debate in the instant circumstance. And of course, in regard to the issue of political parties who, when they lose elections, should be deregistered, which comes as a proposal. Political parties are not our clients, they are our partners. So the political parties will have to make a representation in that regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I've taken one from this end now. I want to go to members of parliament. Honorable members, you are representatives of your people. It's a bit strange that I haven't seen your hands up. Honorable Timbo.
Thank you very much. I don't know if the minister is still around. Is there? Yes, yeah. Firstly, I want to commend the Minister of Justice for quite a passionate and a statesman-like opening statement, and that this document we're dealing with should look beyond politics, should look beyond political parties, and we know that constitutions are not made just for the short time, but for even the long time. I will not go into specific provisions because this is just the start of the process. And as a member of the Legislative Committee, I have a lot of things. My party has a position also which will present within the arguments. That's what we will leave when we're dealing with the document in the Legislative Committee. However, I have 3 points. Firstly, the minister is out. I mean, the bill is out, and the tripartite report is also out. I appeal to you to make the white paper or the white papers and the reports of the Cowan Committee also known to all.
Triple out, one night only. Komon-Tok platform. Dine, dance, slum, celebrate. June 13, 2026, be there. A night of pure sensation. Get ready to groove, dine in style and witness a groundbreaking debut. It's the dinner, dance, and platform show where elegance meets energy and the future takes flight. A night to dine, a night to dance, a night to launch and take a chance. On June 13th, step into the scene on Saint Central where the moment becomes magic. Unforgettable, kind of magic. An unforgettable convergence. Celebrate the official launch of our book and platform. In an atmosphere charged with music, flavor, and inspiration. This is not just an event, it's a movement. Komon-Tok platform.
Very clear.
It's now Komon-Tok.
Section 103. I read. A bill for an act of parliament enacting a new constitution or altering any, the emphasis is on any, of the following provisions of this constitution. I don't want to repeat all the sections, but you spoke about section 85, 87, which are entrenched clauses. And it says, shall not, that's the bill, shall not be submitted to the president for his assent and shall not become law unless the bill, not unless the provision, unless the bill is one holistic document. It is not a provision unless the bill, after it has been passed by parliament and in the form in which it was so passed, the bill in its entirety, in the form in which it was so passed, has, in accordance with the provisions of any law in that behalf, been submitted to and been approved at a referendum. This does not refer to a section. It refers to the document in entirety. So I understand where the leader of the opposition is saying we will kick against any provision that touches or concerns entrenched clauses in this bill, because this document should be taken in its entirety, and this is my submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mfakuruma.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, honorable members.
Order, honorable members, order.
We definitely want to appreciate this document that is in front of us. And I'm happy that the whole country has an opportunity to see what we have been confronted with. My question and the issues I want to raise are with section 32 that speaks to section 3, in which an electoral commissioner should be appointed. We know with elections in this country, we know there are issues that are very political. And I always hold this view that to fix a political problem, we need a political prescription. So, in recommending electoral commissioner to the president, it is a political problem that demands a political solution. Though we believe that interreligious community should be included, though we believe that the Labour Congress should be considered, though we believe that youth groups and women organizations should be considered, we also believe that politicians and political parties should have a say in the recommendation of an electoral commissioner to the president. We cannot leave politicians out of that equation. So for us, I believe that is something that needs to be revisited and reconsidered so we can have something that's cool in the future, will not be controversial. Because we know as a country, we all have respective political lenses. And if that is the case, we can choose respective people in all these organizations, but they possibly will have one political lens. So that is why it's imperative that we all consider including political parties in this equation, because this law should be able to stand the test of time. The second part of this one, Mr. Chairman, is the area that has to do with census before elections, or what census results we should be using. I'm glad the Minister, the Attorney General, Minister of Justice, said they are open to proposals. And it is critical because now we know we have a census that is going to happen 2 years before elections. And we've not had a census, a national census, since 2015. Though we had a midterm census, but we can recall that in that midterm census, it was not accepted by even ECSL at the time when the Public Elections Act came, or the bill came to Parliament, which caused the ECSL to recommend that we have a prescription for that election in which there was an average done for the people that were counted. So if we're going to have an election and a census, though this law could be the law to stand the test of time, but these elections and this cycle should definitely be an exception in which the results from this census should be considered for the next election. And I must go on record to say that the APC has fully supported the census, and the APC will fully support the census. I don't have enough time because I want to give the platform to other speakers.
Thank you.
So I'll just end on 42(2)(e) that talks about elections and the majority of what will be considered in that election. So for the 2(e), for the listening public, it states that no person shall be elected as president of Sierra Leone unless at the presidential election he has polled not less than 55% of the valid votes in his favor. I will say, and I will conclude, that there is no reason. There's a common saying that says, if it's not broke, don't fix it. The 55% is not broken. So let us not endeavor to change that. Because the 50 plus 1 and the 20% as proposed in this bill has other rooms for other issues that we will struggle with as a nation. So definitely, I believe that the 55% will allow even political parties to come together, though this bill is also proposing the registration of political parties, which the APC do not support and do not agree with. We believe all political parties should have a say in the elections of this country, especially if it has to do with representation. We believe 55% should be the one that should stay in the vote, and 50 plus 1, and the 20% will not be one that will stand the test of time. And it will not even survive under the PR, which I believe somebody else will talk about. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Now, one more from this end, and then AG will respond. Yeah? Order.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you for making us be part of these.
Order, honorable members.
Thank you for making us be part of these deliberations. Actually, being here, I am more reassured that we're going to have a constitutional review process that is transparent and that is open. And I want to commend my darling, the Clerk of Parliament, in reassuring us, and members of the High Table that have indicated to us that we're going to have a constitution that is based on consensus and consent. We're going to hold you to that promise. Now, I am not going to go into the position statement of Oraj, because I know that you already have it, and the AG has already promised, and the clerk has already promised that you're going to look into it and take some of it into consideration. I just have some observations based on the presentation of the AG today. I would like to draw your attention that contrary to your presentation on clause 1 of the constitutional amendment, you made a reference to the mandate of the Search and Nomination Committee in your slide, but I would like to mention that it's not in the bill. Should I repeat? I know that you made mention in your slide of the mandate of the Search and Nomination Committee, but that is not mentioned in the bill. Secondly, you did mention and you emphasized that this bill is consistent or is a product of the Cowan recommendation and the tripartite recommendation. There's nothing there that is government creation. I must say, with all due respect, that is what has created the confusion. That statement is what has created the confusion to the public. Because upon closer scrutiny of the bill, juxtaposing it with the Cowan recommendation and the tripartite, you will indeed see that there are deviations, some of which are partial, some of which are outright. So in order to reduce the tension and the confusion and the controversy, I would most respectfully advise that you don't have to justify that it is exactly the same like the Cowan recommendation and the tripartite recommendation, because that is where you create confusion for all of us, because it is not. Also, AG, even where there are alignment, even where you say that even where you say there are alignment between the Cowan recommendation and the tripartite recommendation, and that's the reason why you adopt some of these provisions, and you call them mere modifications. They are actually, in fact, a creation by the government, because they defeat the purpose of the values of the tripartite recommendation, which is inclusivity, participation, and sovereignty of the people. I can give you a simple example. For example, Section 32, we are seeking to amend.
Honorable members, this is an opportunity for us to clarify things here. Let's grab that opportunity, please.
For example, Section 32 that we're seeking to amend with reference to the appointment of the chairman of the Electoral Commission. The tripartite recommendation says that the members of the Search and Nomination Committee must be administered by the Public Service Commission, must be established by the Public Service Commission. However, we have given the power to the president to appoint, which means even though it is partially aligning with the tripartite recommendation, it is deviating from the intent, which is to reduce the discretion of the president and to insulate the chief electoral commissioner from executive interference. So when we say that it is not government creation, we should be careful, because if you change the rationale behind the recommendations and the intent behind the recommendations, it comes across as an imposition. And one last observation that's got to do with clause 9 and 11 of the bill, quickly. They seem to contradict each other. On the one hand, the AG has explained here that we are not introducing a new ground to remove the president when he is expelled from a party or when he resigns from a party. But it is categorically there in clause 9. It seems like that is what we're doing. We're increasing another ground or adding another ground for removal. Yet, clause 19, which talks about the vice president, which is similar to clause 9, says that it should be subject to section 51 of the 1991 Constitution. And by the way, that recommendation is contrary to the Cowan report and is also not in the tripartite recommendations. So again, we have to look into that, because if we leave both of them in the bill, it will create confusion. We'll have to decide, are we going with clause 9 or are we going to clause 11? Because clause 11 seems to amend and remove the effect of section 50, and whilst clause 9 seems to retain section 50. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I'll now call on the AG to respond. Honorable members.
Please, honorable members, please, this session is very important. Let's continue our meetings.
Thank you, colleagues. I'm hoping that we will have.
Hold on. Again, this is a gentle reminder that we're representing the people of Sierra Leone. We can't bring all of them in here, but some of us are privileged to be here representing them. Let's represent them to the best level. Thank you.
Thank you. Like I said, Chair and leaders and members of Parliament, I'm happy that we're having this conversation, and I'm glad we all make a commitment. We've all made a commitment that this will not be the end of it. I think outside this room, we will also have these conversations with various actors, conversations that are not, just convened by members of Parliament. So we really get into the technical details of some of these proposals. I'm happy to discuss with the chair of the PPRC, but the point is that yes, in the Act, we have said, political party regulation commission. Now the point is, the recommendation is to be very clear because registration and regulation are two different things, right? They're two different things. To register, to take responsibility for registration of political parties, and then take responsibility for regulation of political parties are different. But we'll have that discussion, and then we will figure out together whether we go with the recommendation that you will be very specific on the registration mandate of the commission, or whether its work is covered in its regulatory mandate. So we'll discuss that. To my brother and colleague, and to add another comrade of the Radicals Club, Honorable Tigo. I know that the opposition APC. First is to say that yes, these documents, as much as yes we say they have been public documents, we will do our part to share them again. Matter of fact, the Minister of Information and Civic Education is here, and we have been working together on a very robust public education program. He likes to correct me because we don't want this to be just information sharing. We want a process that we can call an engagement with members of the public. Yes, we want to listen, we want to learn, and we want to incorporate feedback into this work. And so, as part of that public information strategy, this week actually we will be today. He has said today actually we will be launching a website for the constitutional review process, and so everything will be out there. The documents that we have referenced here will be out there, and so you have our word that these documents will be available. I think we seem to have a disagreement on our readings of section 108. Respectfully, I think our readings, but I think I'll engage but not preempt, how you will look at it in the legislative committee. But I think our readings of it are different. I'm glad that my colleague and sister, Mrs. Michael, spoke about the letters and the intent. I think, we'll have to go into what the intent was, but it is just to say that we know that at this point, we don't really know the form in which this is going to go to the president, right? Or the form in which it is going to come out of parliament. But that form will actually, determine what goes to the president or what becomes part of a broader package for a referendum. But I think is to say respectfully that our readings of it, taking it that it has to be in a separate bill because of the use of that word is very different. But I mean, we can discuss that as colleagues, and make sure that when it gets to the legislative committee, I think we are all on the same page. Yes, and on the appointment of the ECSL chair, I take your point, Honorable, that political actors should be included in the process. I think when we discussed this on the tripartite committee, we did not consider that. The idea was to really take that decision-making process from the hands of the political actors. I think we tried to look at the Kenyan model in which the search committee appoints the chief electoral commissioner, and then what we try to get like a blend with our own system, where like you don't take out the president's powers completely, but to say yes, the search committee will do its part, and then you'll recommend to the president, and then the president will select from that group. But this is a discussion that we should have because you're not the only one who has said so. In discussions with the other political parties, all political parties, Association, or let's say 15, the other 15 political parties, they also expressed the same concern that political actors have been taken out of the process. So I think this is a discussion that we should have. And again, I emphasize that is why this is a bill. I mean, all of these discussions should really enrich, the outcome of this exercise. So now let's have. So we'll talk about that. Census results to be used. I think we have made our own proposal on how that clause should read. Whether we have a transition clause in there on when it comes into effect. I think let's discuss that. But again, it's before you. We're happy to discuss all of these options and come up with something that will work for all of us. Section 42, I think we'll discuss, but I think there's really broad. When the current committee looked at it, when the white paper discussed it, when we discussed it on the tripartite committee, yes, it was our view was that it's broken, it has problems, and really, if we look at best practice, in the region, we struggle to find a country that still uses that system. So we also took note of the challenges we've had to deal with when we're going to run off elections and say, yes, what we propose now does not eliminate the chance of a runoff completely. It's still possible, but it reduces that chance substantially. So let's have that discussion as well. To my colleague, Mrs. Basita Michael. So, I think I like to say respectfully, when we have audiences that listen to us, I think it is good to do our part in getting the information right so that we send to them. Because in this day and age, you say one thing, yes, just like me, right? I say certain things, people will question, but then there will be people who will move on with that. So when we say certain things and try to state them as authoritative positions, I think we should be careful. What you state about doing this, I can't quote your exact words, but within the Public Service Commission, the process that we set up through or within the Public Service Commission, that is not true. That is not what recommendation 36 says. 36 talks about yes, the search and nominating committee for the appointment of Electoral Commission and chair of the PPRC, right? And talks about 9 processes, including one from each. It lays out Interreligious Council, Bar Association, Civil Society, Labour Congress, Sierra Association of Journalists, Women's Organizations, Youth Groups, and the only mention of the Public Service Commission is that the search and nominating committee to be supported administratively by the Public Service Commission. I think let's be very clear the way we put this. It is an administrative support. The Public Service Commission doesn't even have any role in the constitution of the body. So let's try not to give that impression to members of the public. It only says the search and nomination to be administratively supported. It's just to provide an administrative support. It has nothing absolutely to do like its constitution and the way it carries out its mandates, etc. It's only to provide administrative support. So I think let's be very clear on that, and I think let's be very careful in the way we communicate these things. I still want to say, in the spirit of the same comments that I have made, the way we communicate this to other people, I like to hold myself accountable. And I have been very clear. The moment this was put together, since last year, I started saying that a few of the proposals have been amended. I was very public about that. These are not things that have taken place in hiding. And yes, you might say that when you amend certain proposals, you might alter the intent. That is true. That is true. But I still go by what I have said consistently since last year, that the proposals in this bill are not creations of government. They are creations of these two processes. But I have said that there are certain proposals that have been amended, but that is how government functions. So now, let's put it this way. I've been in government a few years. I'm still learning, right? And you know, I learn from people in government. I learn from people who have served in government. In fact, next to you is my big brother and partner. We call ourselves a partnership on the tripartite committee. When we served on the tripartite committee, and sometimes when things were difficult to handle, the entirety of the committee would put it in the hands of myself and Dr. Richard Conte and say, you are the partnership, get a solution. And we will hand heads. We will look at options. We will engage various individuals on our respective teams. And then we'll come back with proposals. Most times, the entirety of the committee will adopt the proposals that we bring. But during this process, noting that, you know, he has, of course, lived in this world longer than I have. He has served in government in various roles, in the office of president and, you know, in various ministries. I've had to learn a lot from him, right? Same with Dr. Mara, I used to say so. So I'm still learning. So, but one thing that I know during this time that I've been learning is that when bodies make recommendations, they are called recommendations for a reason. They are not called directives. They are called recommendations. If you go back to, let's even take it to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report. When the TRC issued its report, handed the report to late President Kaba in 2004, there was a white paper. And then, of course, we saw with other commissions of inquiry that we have set up. The Shaz Moses Commission of Inquiry, inclusive. And then, you know, you come to the Kawan Constitutional Committee report 2017 white paper. And then you come to the 2022 white paper. If you read these, you will find three common things. One is government rejecting some to say we cannot do this. That's deviation. But two, government accepting these recommendations. And three, government accepting with modifications. That's how government functions. Check the various white papers. That's how. So it is okay, government will accept with modifications. Yes, those modifications might affect the intent of the provision, or they might alter the outcome in certain ways, right? So and the point is that we have not hidden away from this fact. I came out publicly before anybody could point it out that yes, there are certain proposals that have been modified. I discussed this because that is how governments function, right? And so now that we have had these modifications, we have laid them, yeah, we have again said that even on these proposals that have been modified, we want to have additional discussions. Let us use these discussions to determine whether we keep them in their modified form, or we take them to the original proposal, or we get rid of them altogether, or, let's just say how we make the provisions better. That is what we should do. And I think that should be part of what we communicate to our audiences, especially when we know that the room is still open to have these discussions, instead of, putting it as though, certain people have taken certain positions, that are completely out of the way. I think the way sometimes, these are received, they undermine the processes that we are all trying to make better. So on this, again, you have my word, and I know I'll speak for government on this, and buttress the points made by the leadership of Parliament, that we are open to having discussions about this. We are open to looking at different clauses, looking at variations. There are proposals here from the tripartite and common processes that we might even want to review and make better. So let's have these discussions. I think it's an opportunity for us in government to learn from you. It's also an opportunity for you to, get the rationale for certain things. At the end of the day, we'll find common ground. No guarantees that we'll agree on every letter, but I think we'll make significant progress and find common ground to really produce something that will be good for the people of this country. So please, we have not attempted to defeat the purposes of this. We have good reasons for the modification. I think even in the bill, when we said that the president will appoint a search and nomination committee with representatives from these various bodies, yes, maybe we need to make the language more direct and say these bodies will nominate their persons, right? Maybe that's what we need to do. Maybe it's a language. Maybe we will say, if you go to the Agreement for National Unity, Clause 3 of the Agreement for National Unity, Clause 3 actually says the president will constitute a cross-party committee for electoral systems reform. But how did we interpret that? The president actually asked the opposition to submit their names. That is what happened. It did not translate into the president making the individual appointment. So clearly, yes, let's not leave it open to ambiguity. Let's make it better, and so we'll work together. But I'm just grateful for your feedback and for your very kind comments, and really happy to work with you on this.
Thank you very much, AG. Honorable Mohammed Bangura, Honorable William Slamin, and Honorable Mahama Zombo, in this order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would like to commend the AG's office. Am I protected?
You only use that protection if you talk beyond 2 minutes.
First of all, I would like to commend the AG's office because this bill is less controversial the way I've seen it. But let me
Order, honorable members.
Let me bring you section 42. 1. A presidential candidate shall either be nominated by a political party or an independent candidate. I will want you to put a caveat on this. Put a caveat on this. that provided such individual was not a member, a registered member of a political party for 2 years. 2 years. For 2 years. For 2 years. And also, I would just want to support Dr. Mfa. When you make laws, you said the president
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. This now Komon-Tok. In case you don't know. Oh, yeah.
Order.
You know what, Mr. Chairman? I'll wait for you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Williams Lamin. Remember you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the High Table, I stand on the existing protocols. I want to take this single opportunity to say thank you, AG, for the concerted effort in putting this document together. But my concern here is clause...
Honorable members.
This clause 8, section 43 of the Constitution. On the side note, it says period during which presidential elections take place. On clause 43(1), the presidential elections be held on the second Saturday in November in every 5th year. My concern here is that we have a very accommodating atmosphere in Sierra Leone. We have 60% of our population are Islamic and 40% is Christian, and the 40% Christians, they are 10% over a 7-day Adventist in Sierra Leone, who stand on over 125 years existence in Sierra Leone, who have contributed immensely by having, like you said, I use the word discussions. If we have discussions around the day of the election, will help us a lot, so that 860,000 members of Sierra Leone population will not be discouraged to come to the polling pool at that time. Because if we are talking about 8.6 million people in Sierra Leone, and about 10% of that population are worshippers on Saturday, I want us to discuss the issue of if we can move that day from Saturday to Thursday. That would be my take. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Your point is well noted. Now, in the first order, earlier on I said Honorable Mohamed Bambura, Honorable Williams Flamin, Honorable Mama Zombo, then I'll take different, I'll take other set of people. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, sexual abuse part, I think it should read sexual offenses, because sexual harassment is a major form of, it's a crime. And there are people who harass women, particularly. That is a crime. So it has to be sexual offenses. There are different kinds of sexual offenses. So let's not limit it to just rape. Women and men also. And I would also like us to look at cybercrime. Cybercrime, this is criminal. And if someone has committed cybercrime, that person or consistently commits cybercrime, that person should not be a member of parliament. And also, contempt of parliament. If you are in parliament and you have committed contempt of parliament severally, then you are not qualified to be a member of parliament in the other section. Women and men. I'm speaking about women and men. And also, drug-related offenses. If you have been convicted of drug-related offenses, then you are not fit to be a member of parliament. That can exclude you. Secondly, I'll speak of the PR system, section 74, subsection 1. I am calling on all women to support this section, this addition. We are here today, and this solid surge is because of the PR system. Majorly because of the PR system. So this is not about party issue. This is about us being here and more women being here. We want to have up to 60%, if possible, of women in the House of Parliament. We have already set the stage. We have set the stage in Africa, globally. So we want to continue being here and have more women here. Let us support the PR system. Don't even look at the parties. We are not going to rely on that. Let us support women, please. And men who are she for his or he for she's. He for she's supports us. The PR system's advantage is big. And apart from it being a peaceful system, because we have seen this, there is no problem with replacing people in parliament. We know that it's going to increase the number of women. Let's stop entrenched male dominance and patronage.
All right, we have 30 seconds.
And the party list, we would rather have a fair alternation. Let's start with women. One woman, one man in the same system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, basically, yes. Honorable members, of course, once this document has been laid on the table of Parliament, it is our document. So for the amendment, we'll have ample opportunity as members of Parliament to amend it when we get to committee stage. This opportunity is only for us to give our overview idea on the bill. But to get into the bill proper, we'll do when we get to committee stage.
Okay, thank you very much. Leader, on that note, I'll take two more speakers. The Mayor, Ivona Kisoya, and Dr. Emmanuel Gaima. I close the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. AG, let me use this opportunity to thank you for an excellent presentation, very detailed, and to say thank you to the Parliament for providing this opportunity for us, the members of the public, to be part of this privileged event. One of the things that's been said by the AG a number of times today is that government has the imperative or the prerogative, shall I say, to make their own decisions, to take recommendations, either take them in full, reject them, or tweak them. I'm really pleased that we have a system of governance wherein we have a legislature who, as parliamentarians, are representing their people right across this country. They also have the objective, or they have the opportunity to take what government has presented and to make changes. So we expect that this is going to be a process, as Chairman has said, as Leader of Parliament has said, and as Honorable Abdul Karim, Leader of Opposition, has really put on the table, that we're going to have a fair process. When it comes to the vote, we know that 108 says 2/3 of members of Parliament, not 2/3 of those at Parliament on that day. So we're looking forward to seeing these sorts of issues addressed properly. The other point, hello, honorable members, if I may, Mr. Chairman. The other point that I'd really like to make, AG.
Order, please.
Order, members. We're rounding up now.
You said the elephant in the room. You said the elephant in the room is the PR. It's the PR. It's the elephant. You are quoting the Deputy Speaker. The elephant has a twin elephant. The other elephant in the room.
Honorable members. Okay, hold on. Honorable members. Please, let's pay attention. Again, it's a gentle reminder that you're representing the woman from Calabar who is able to be here.
Honorable members, please. Honorable members, yes. There are certain stakeholders, we treat them in two categories. Please. All right? Please, for this purpose of the privilege. Please, honorable members. Please, honorable members. Honorable. This is Parliament, and there's order. This is Parliament, and there is order in Parliament. Honorable member.
Okay, Mr. Clark, just hold on. Mr. Clark, hold on. Honorable members, may I please have your attention? I don't think this is so difficult, especially in the interest of our people. All we need to do, let's just pay attention. We're not asking for too much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much, Clerk of Parliament. I really appreciate that. There were two more points I wanted to make. One of them is, as the AG said, the elephant in the room, as he described it, was the PR. And on the PR, I just like to make a point. One, that we are, as a woman myself, obviously very, very, very keen to see more female participation in governance at every level, from the presidency to the parliament to local government. But PR is not the only way to do that. So I just like to make that point. The second point I'd like to make is the elephant's twin. The elephant has a twin. And the twin is when the tripartite recommendations moved the threshold from 55% to 50% plus one. After great debate from all there, it was agreed that it would be 25% in 50% of the districts. As you've said, the government has the prerogative to tweak, and you've tweaked. You've brought the threshold down to 20%, and you've said 2/3. I'd like to say that personally, I think that's very concerning, and I'm very glad that Parliament has the opportunity to use this platform to take us back to where the tripartite recommendation took us, so that we come back to 50% plus one and 25% in half of the districts of the country. I'll stop there. And once more, I'm not part of the radicals. You begin to feel left out when you're not in the radicals, right? When these guys are talking. I'm not part of the radicals, but I think you're still going to take what I'm saying as your sister.
Thank you very much, Dr. Emmanuel Gayama. Other honorable members.
Mr. Chairman, leadership of Parliament, Attorney General.
Hold on. Again, honorable members, I'm pleading with you. We are almost there.
And Mr. Chair, I am following the comment on the live, and the public is so disappointed that on such a crucial bill, members of Parliament are so notorious. Please, members of Parliament, let's listen to the contributors. This bill belongs to us. We have a lot to say. We have a lot to do.
That's exactly what we're trying to do. But then again, we have to conduct ourselves in a way that strangers will be willing to trust us with their information. Yes, proceed.
Mr. Chairman, I want to stand on the protocol.
Other honorable members.
Dr. Gayama, let's listen to saying, please.
I had my sister make reference to the principle.
Oh, hold on. Honorable members, is this really so difficult? Remember, we are all leaders. We're representing people from different districts. They're there watching us on TV. If we can't pay attention to each other, how can we represent them? Proceed.
Chairman, reference was made to certain principles. Of the tripartite. So the best of my knowledge, those were principles we carved out of the tripartite as a mechanism to enable us to have the discussion in an environment where we have the opposition party and government representing government, constitutional and political parties. For future guidance, as this process continues, one of the things we did a lot of emphasis on was we also wanted, in the event somebody wanted to inject anything new, to look at where is the jurisdiction coming from and whether that is really and globally accepted best practice. So that we don't have any utopian concept into our system that cannot stand the test of time. So I wanted us to look at that one. Secondly, there was the issue of consensus. The 80 recommendations we agreed from the outset, both from the APC and part of the government, that the recommendations to be accepted, there must be from the government side and from the APC side. So I want to encourage members of Parliament from both political parties that whatever is in there is actually coming as a result of what was agreed on by the agreed constitution. The representatives on the part of the government and on the part of the APC. Suffice to say, the other 15 political parties, and I kept repeating that perhaps we had 15 political parties that were outside of the room. But in the interest of the state and governance, we assume that those people who are representing government, including my humble self, we are representing all the 15 political parties. And the third one, which is really very critical, whenever we had issues that became extremely contentious and it was difficult to arrive at consensus, we differed. We said there should be consultation, government must consult. And in that consultative process, we recognize the leadership role of government, hoping that government will lead on the process. In the last couple of weeks, I've been hearing positions being articulated that CSOC. There was not a single time that would be found that it was going to be a CSO. And so I just want to guide, as we go forward, get to the point within government, what is consultation? In terms of what is consultation, what's the minimum threshold, what happens when there is an agreement, and this is something I want to assure this House that government is working on speedily. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. AG, AG, respond, and then we close the session.
Yeah, I think this one will be short. I don't think there's much I agree with. I think on the issue of independent candidates you spoke about, yes, we have actually indicated that it would be good to put certain conditions to prescribe by Parliament. But I take your point because when we say that the person should not be a member of a political party, it's actually to prevent the situation where, for example, someone loses in the flag bearer contest and just transitions. So we had in mind 1 year, but I think discussing it whether 2 years would be better. I think that is something that we should discuss. The date for election, honorable, let's discuss. But I think previous elections have taken place on Saturday. But certainly, I think maybe the last election didn't happen on Saturday. But let's discuss by all means and see what really works for the country. I agree with Honorable Zeno on the PR, and yes, Parliament can discuss whether they extend the scope of disqualification. And then, of course, today I have had a lot of discussions about the PR and why. I think that I have laid out here. Like I said, no one system is perfect. But since we have mechanisms that have recommended PR and voting practices in other countries, I think let's have a detailed discussion on the kind of PR that will work for this country. That is why we've not prescribed any. Same with the threshold system. Yes, I know that we moved from 25% to 20%. Like I said in my presentation, we looked at it and realized that the 25% in half of the voting district does not solve the problem, because the idea was keeping the country together, so parties are actually moving beyond their strongholds and then getting a national agreement. That is why we said reduce the threshold to 20, but then broaden the scope. But certainly that is the discussion that we must all have. But whilst I have the mic, this is really, I just want to use this opportunity to thank the chair of the Legislative Committee, as well as the leadership of Parliament, for the opportunity to do this. And I want to also thank all of you, members of Parliament, and our civil society partners, other members of the audience. I'm really grateful for the input. I'm really grateful for the engagement that we have all had with this process. This is exactly what we anticipated. This is what we want, so that we can get something that works for this country. Again, nothing is set in stone. These are proposals. In some areas, there might be maybe interpretation issues or challenges with drafting or formatting, but let's all discuss and see. And really you will find out that maybe, the intent is not affected, you understand, if we probably look at the drafting again, but Mr. Thompson is on hand to get input from everyone and really give us what we want. So by all means, please, let's work on this. But I also want to especially acknowledge the work that the Tripartite Implementation Secretariat is doing on these reforms, as well as other recommendations that fall within the 80 recommendations in the Tripartite report. They will also open their doors to engagement on this reform, as well as on other aspects of the Tripartite report. Really deeply, I'm grateful for your time, and please, let's do this together for the people of Sierra Leone.
Thank you very much, AG. Before you leave, you understand.
Mr. Champ, this is not a question, but I just want you to bear in mind just this. Like I said, I have expressed our unreserved intentions to cooperate fully. But again, this agreement was between the government of Sierra Leone and the All People's Congress political party. So to me, even in the preparation of the recommendations, government was fully involved at the highest office of legislation in government. You were there, you were part of the process. So I wonder why government would have appended their signature to certain recommendations. And at the end of the day, changes were made to those recommendations that were made in the presence of government's highest representatives. So please, I just want you to bear this in mind, Mr. H. If you want to reply, but that's just what I want you to bear in mind.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the parliamentary leadership, I want to thank each and every one of you for your meaningful I want to thank all of you on behalf of parliamentary leadership for your meaningful contribution to this exercise. The discussion will continue and continue to reach out to the constituents, and by the end of the day, we know that what you bring to Parliament will help make this law that will stand the test of time. Thank you very much, and God bless you.